Good morning. Hope that your Wednesday is off to a good start. Mine is so far. Second cup of coffee in my outdoor office on a day that feels more like late April than early November. So I want to continue what I've been doing the last several weeks, reflecting on various books of the Bible, or groups of books, as it has been the case most of the time. You don't need me to discuss the election last night. I'm not paid to be a political commentator. Rather, I'm going to talk about what I know. So as we have progressed through the Old Testament, through the Hebrew Scriptures, we now get to three books that are associated with King Solomon. Now, Solomon, you probably know, was the son of King David. In Israelite history, David is the paradigm. He's the one that all the other kings get measured against. Solomon is his son. He was born to Bathsheba, and if that name doesn't ring a bell, read through Samuel, and you'll read a lot about her and David. So he is the son of King David. He's born to Bathsheba. In the Bible, Solomon is famed for two things. First, great wealth, and second, great wisdom. At David's death, and Solomon was crowned king, the Lord asked him for a wish. Speak to me. And Solomon asked for wisdom. And because he had asked for wisdom and not for wealth and fame, he got wisdom, and as a reward also got wealth. And so he is famous for being fantastically rich and also being very, very wise. And so we now get to three books, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, that are associated with King Solomon. Now, Solomon reigned from 971 to 931 BC. And so we're at a point in time where we can anchor people to definite or pretty nearly definite time frames. And he is associated with these three books. That doesn't necessarily mean he wrote them, but he is associated with them. So let's look at them in order. Proverbs. Proverbs is a long series of wisdom sayings. Apparently, Solomon collected a lot of them. He may have written some of them, but he probably collected a lot of them. Some of the sayings in there are said to be the sayings of the wise, a group of people. Others are attributed to Agur and some to Lemuel. So it's not like Solomon sat down and wrote all 31 chapters of this at one time, but rather these are sayings, some of which may have come from him, some that were written by other people, and he collected them. The final collection of the Proverbs was, by most reckoning, done during the reign of King Hezekiah, which have been a couple of hundred years after Solomon. The audience of Proverbs though you can't be certain, appears to be a sort of an anonymous young man. And when you read through Proverbs, you can pick up on some really definite themes. Wisdom, or the wise. What is it to be wise? What is it to be foolish? What is it to be simple? The book addresses a lot of different topics. Marriage, diligence as opposed to laziness, friendship, child rearing, domestic peace. This book is very, very practical. It's wisdom sayings. It's not promises. It's not prophecy. It's simply conventional wisdom sayings. So that's Proverbs. And then there's Ecclesiastes. And these three books are really different. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. Ecclesiastes is called, the writer of Ecclesiastes calls himself the preacher. The actual Hebrew word is kohelet. Right there in Ecclesiastes 1:1. Some interpreters ascribe this book to Solomon. Others say that it is a group of others who are sort of acting as in the role of Solomon as a teacher of wisdom. When you read through Ecclesiastes, it does read differently than Proverbs. And it comes across as the words of someone who is older, who is experienced, as we would put it, who's been around the block a few times. The book at times comes off even almost cynical. There are two different sections on vanities, and it concludes that pretty much everything in life is just that vanity. The Hebrew word there is hevel, which really could translate as vapor or breath. The writer applied himself to a lot of different things and discovered that in the final analysis, all of it was vain. All of it was nothing. The writer concluded that there was indeed nothing new under the sun, and famously concluded that there was a time and a place for everything under heaven. A time for war and a time for peace, a time for hate, a time to love, a time for silence, a time to speak, a time to be born, and a time to die, etc., etc. That's Ecclesiastes. So we go from a book that is almost cynical. Everything is vanity. There's nothing new under the sun, to the Song of Solomon. A note about the title of this book. It is also known as the Song of Songs. It's the same book. Some editions of the Bible call it Song of Songs. Some call it Song of Solomon. It doesn't really matter. There's not a whole lot of significance there. What I've got and use most commonly uses Song of Solomon, but it's the same book. Going to the Song of Solomon, this does not necessarily mean that he wrote it. It's more likely that it was written in his honor, probably rather late in life. It is a most remarkable book. It is a remarkable, remarkable book. It's one of only two books in the Bible that does not have the word God. gold star from the preacher if you can think of the other book that does not mention God at all. This is at bare bones analysis. Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, is simply a series of love poems, love letters between two young lovers. Young woman and the young man that she's in love with, they are speaking back and forth in this book, and with occasional speeches from interjections from what in dramatic terms we might call a chorus. The real tricky thing with Song of Solomon is how we interpret it. What in the world do we do with this thing? And the readers and interpreters through the years have had a lot of difficulty in interpreting this. For a lot of Jewish history and Christian history, it has been taken sort of allegorically, and over the last century or two, it has been read more and more just as a series of what it is, love poems. My own personal opinion is that yes, it is. They are love poems, but it's more than that. That there is something else going on here. The remarkable thing about these three books is just how different they are. Particularly between Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. In the Christian canon, they are right beside each other. In the Hebrew canon, they're not. Proverbs is between Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. But in the Christian ordering of the books of the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon are right beside each other. They are, in some way or another, both associated with King Solomon, and they are so dramatically different books. One is almost cynical and jaded, and the other is just exuberant with love. And to me, it's just remarkable that these two books that are right side by side in our ordering of the Old Testament, both in one way or another associated with the same person, are so dramatically different. So with that, sometime take a read through these three books, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon, and in particular, read Ecclesiastes followed by Song of Solomon. So part of the richness of Scripture is that there is such a wide variety in the books. Obviously, there's a great variety between something like Revelation and First Chronicles. But even two books that would come from roughly the same time period and are written to honor the same person or maybe written by the same person are so dramatically different. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday.